After surviving a traumatic and violent assault, my guest Lois decided to speak up and speak out. Lois shares her inspiring story of activism, forgiveness, and healing, which serves as a powerful reminder of the strength and resilience within us all. Trigger warning: this episode includes discussions about violent sexual assaults. Listener discretion is advised. And if you need support, please see the links in the show notes. I'm your host, Dashankar, and you're listening to That Was the Moment. Forgiving my attacker set me free. My guest today is Lois Wagner. Lois is an activist, life coach, speaker, storyteller, adventurous traveller and explorer. Lois has experienced many challenges in her life, including losing a business, going bankrupt, being attacked, and being forced into retirement. As a thriver, her inspirational stories motivate you to develop a growth mindset, build your resilience and grit, energize your mojo, and achieve your goals. Thank you so much for joining me today, Lois. If you'd like to tell us about your moment.
Right. I was in partnership in a digital printing company. This is in the early days of digital printing, where nobody had color printers. So it was a unique setup. We had a beautiful little cottage where we set up our operation in Cape Town. And I was working late one night on a job just before New Year. And it was a beautiful summer's evening. I was sitting in the courtyard and I was making button badges for the minstrel carnival, which takes place every New Year's Day. And it was such a lovely evening. I had the radio playing, I had a glass of drink in front of me, and I was as happy as anything. And it was a small courtyard behind an 8-foot wall. And this man scaled this 8-foot wall. And I didn't hear him, I didn't see him. The first that I knew he was there, he had his arm around my neck and a screwdriver to my neck. So it was quite an horrendous experience. I fought as hard as I could. I didn't know how to fight. I lost the fight, and he beat me up really badly, stabbed me numerous times in my face, my head, my ears, broke the glass, stabbed it in my stomach and my chest. So I was in a really bad state, and he also raped me. He then tied me up and left me to bleed to death. Well, I didn't die because I'm still here, but that was that was the moment in my life. The word rape was never spoken about in polite circles. It didn't happen to you and me. It didn't happen to anybody. It was just a terrible word. Obviously, this is way before the Me Too movement. And I just thought, I've got to let the world know that this happens, and we've got to put a stop to it. So that was the moment. That was the moment that I changed so much in my life, that I became an activist and I wanted to change the world.
Wow. So I watched your TED Talk that you sent me, which I'll add a link to the show notes so everyone can watch it. And listening to you recall it again, it's still like really gets to me of how, brutal it was, and how unsuspecting you were that anything would go wrong in that, like at that moment.
It was just such a horrific experience. And the worst part, well, that wasn't the worst part, is that the rapist was out on bail for rape.
Oh.
And I just thought, this is wrong. I have to do something about this. This shouldn't happen, and I wanted to change the law. It was in the time of the coming out of apartheid for South Africa, and they were calling for suggestions for the new constitution. And I said, well, this is my opportunity. So I lobbied and I led marches and I wrote to ministers, and I went very, very public, very loud, because I wanted to make a change to the law and get this kind of thing stopped, get perpetrators locked up and behind bars so they can't hurt people a second, third, or fourth time.
If we just go back to how you said, like rape wasn't even a word that was mentioned, were you not scared about talking about it? Was there ever a moment that you thought, I'm just going to keep quiet about this?
Not at all. I was so angry.
Yeah.
I was just so angry. I just thought this shouldn't happen. How can this happen? And I wanted people to know that this happens. We had a terrible experience about a year before me, where a young girl from Port Elizabeth was brutally attacked and raped and left for dead. She was attacked by two Satanists, and she became headline news. But her story was so extreme, she had no choice to go public because she was just headline news. And what made me so angry was that, yes, that was such an extreme case, but what about the less extreme cases? What about the date rapes? What about where the people are not harmed, where they're not hurt? And then, I started doing research and I found out how common it was. And I just thought, no, we've got to get the word out. We've got to make a difference in the world.
Wow. And so where did you start? How do you start with something like that?
Well, as I say, I started lobbying. I started writing to the ministers. I really just went as public as I could. I was interviewed by various TV stations and newspapers, and I just went out there. I got petitions written. And yeah, I was just out there shouting the odds.
Yeah. And how long after your attack was this?
Almost immediately,
Oh, wow.
the very night that it happened, I was determined to do two things: to write about it and let people know. That very night, I started writing a journal saying, the world must know that this happens to everybody, not just to that extreme case in Port Elizabeth. It happens to ordinary people every day. And, the average number of rapes, reported rapes in South Africa at the moment is 2,000 a month.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
it's like, it's just crazy, crazy numbers. And so we didn't know that. That wasn't a number that was spoken about. GBV was never spoken about. And I just thought, we've got to get this out there. We've got to let people know that this is happening all the time, all over, to everybody.
And what was the response like?
Oh, very mixed.
Yeah.
I had people who told me to stop talking about it. I had people who just avoided me. I had people who avoided the topic. And then I had people who supported me 100% and marched with me and supported me.
Wow. And were those people that didn't support you or didn't want to talk about it, were they part of your family and like friendship groups, or were they mainly strangers?
Mixed family, friends, strangers.
Yeah.
So it was mixed between everybody. But, it was obviously such a controversial thing to speak about. So some people embraced it and other people avoided it. So it was very mixed. Some close people to me refused to talk about it, told me I was being stupid. So it was quite a journey. The fascinating part was I gave a talk to a women's group, and there were about 100 women in the group. And I stood up in my talk and I said to them, 25 of you have been or will be raped. And there was a stunned silence. It was like, it was this is ridiculous. And when I went to the bathroom during the break, 4 women came into the bathroom to speak to me. And I was the first person they had ever told of their experience. And so I helped people, I opened the door, I gave people an opportunity to have their voice and to speak out. And through that, I met this wonderful woman, Sunette Smith, she was at the time a 5th Dan karate expert, but she specialized in teaching women how to prevent rape. And so we worked together. I gave my story to her so she could use it in her training. So it was really a wonderful exposure of the need to know how to protect yourself.
Oh, definitely. And You know, you were saying how 4 people came up to you in the bathroom. I think it is something that people don't talk about, or women don't feel comfortable talking about it, or there's a lot of shame about admitting it. I think you sharing your story sounds like it's definitely empowered them to say, hey, yeah, that happened to me too.
Absolutely. And, speaking about it, not everybody should go public like me.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have a certain kind of personality to go as public as I've got. But speaking about it to a therapist, to a friend, to a family member, to your dog, to your cat, just by speaking out, by speaking about it, you are releasing some of the pain, and you're sharing it with the universe, and it helps alleviate some of those triggers and some of those terrible memories. So I highly recommend people speak. Speak to yourself in the mirror if there's nobody that you can trust to speak to. But do speak, do write, because it definitely helps.
Yeah, and there's so much more information coming out about how we now like store trauma in our body, and by not talking about it, that's just staying within you and like eating away at you, like literally eating away at your body.
It does, the body-mind connection. Now, what happened to me, and this is the second or maybe the third moment in my life, was 2 years later. Well, first of all, 2 months later, my business partner betrayed me and he put the business into liquidation. I didn't want to work there anymore because of the experience. So I asked him to buy me out. And instead of buying me out, he put the business into liquidation. The business closed. He sequestrated himself in his personal capacity. I went out and got a job thinking that was the best thing to do. And so the whole debt of the business landed on my shoulders, and it took me many years to pay off that debt. So that was the second big moment in my life that I was full of hatred and debt, which I had to carry for so long. But then 2 years later, I was working, and one morning I just couldn't get out of bed. I climbed out of bed and my back just collapsed. And I went for MRI scans, etc., etc. I was told I had to have a back operation. Had a back operation, it failed. Had a second back operation, it failed. 6 months bedridden until it was pointed out to me that there was nothing wrong with me physically. It was all psychosomatic. What has happened was, because I'd become this activist, because I was out there changing the world, I wasn't dealing with my problem. I wasn't dealing with my negative emotions, my hatred, my disgust, my shame, my fear, all of those things. I wasn't dealing with them. I was putting them behind me. I wasn't facing. And eventually my back just said, I can't hold you up anymore.
Yeah.
And my back collapsed. And my surgeon said that I would never hike or scuba dive again, which were my two passions at the time, because I could never carry anything on my back. Yeah. And I did some inner work. I dealt with those emotions. I had 8 chiropractic treatments, and I did a 5-day hiking trail with a 29-kilogram backpack.
Oh, amazing.
So that is why it's so important to deal with those emotions before you become an activist.
Yeah. And did you do any therapy? I'm guessing it wasn't really a done thing back then.
No, I didn't at first, because I was this activist. And then friends kept saying to me they think I should do therapy. This was months afterwards. I can't remember now how long afterwards, but people said I should go for therapy. And I went to a therapist. He was obviously the wrong therapist for me. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't get any benefit from it. And so that's the other lesson that people should be aware of, that not everything's going to work for everybody. You've got to find what's going to work for you. Yeah. Everybody's healing journey is different, and it's important that you try different things until you find the one that is right for you.
Definitely. I find it interesting that, you said you were just putting everything behind you and then your back gave out. Like you were literally putting everything on your back. and then your back gave out. That's so interesting at how it manifested in your body. There must be so many emotions that you were feeling. How did you deal with them?
Well, I did a lot of mindfulness work and somatic healing, where you just go inside and you look at the hurt, you look at the emotion, and you say, what is this doing for me? Because there is a reason that you have them. You know, sometimes it's just to help you deal with the event. But it's so important that you separate the event from the emotion. You can't change the event.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to say that happened. You can't forget it, you can't change it, but separate it from the emotion. You can change your emotions by just working through it, by looking at that emotion, looking to see what it's doing to your body, using all your five senses. What does it feel like, sound like, taste like? And really just examine the impact it is having on your body, and then saying, how do I want it to be? And starting to find alternatives. So I always say to people, create a vision board. People today all create vision boards on their house and their job and their car and all the things they want in life. I suggest people do it with the emotions. What are the emotions you want to feel in your life? And describe them in as much detail as possible, and then visualize those emotions and put yourself into that future state and create affirmations that go with it. I'm happy, I'm full of sunshine, I can hear the birds singing, I'm calm, I'm relaxed, I'm guilt-free, all of those things. And it starts working. It definitely starts helping you on the road to healing.
That's an amazing exercise.
Definitely works. It'll work at different speeds for different people. Sometimes it's immediate, sometimes it takes a while. A lot of people say you shouldn't dwell on the negative emotion. I say you should, but not for too long. You need to examine what that emotion is and how it's impacting on your body before you change to the positive. So it really is important. And somatic work, just focusing on your body, focusing, self-hugging, stroking your hands. There's so many little techniques just to help you focus on the positive rather than the negative.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've had other guests on the podcast that we've talked about similar things on, like we're very much told to never be angry. Don't be angry. That's not a good emotion to feel. So we suppress it, and really all that's doing is we're just keeping it inside. And if we don't let the anger out, that's going, and not just anger, any emotion, if we're not letting it out, then it's going somewhere. And then, it comes out in some other way.
Absolutely. So, yeah, so my recommendation is always deal with it sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Tell me more about the activist side of things. So you did all the lobbying, and on your TED talk, talk about the parole.
Right. So this was now 14 years later. I had left the country. I'd been out of the country for a year, and I was coming home for my first holiday. And for some reason, I had never made any inquiries up until that point. For some reason, I decided to contact the authorities to find out if he was still in prison. And they informed me that he was up for parole the day after I arrived in the country. And that was just such a coincidence. Also, the law in South Africa had just changed, allowing what they call victims of serious crime to attend a parole hearing. And so I thought, the universe has spoken, it's serendipitous, I must go. And against the advice of most of my family and friends, I went to the parole hearing. I was the first person in South Africa to go to a parole hearing. And so they weren't quite sure how to manage me or the situation. It was quite intense, I think. And somebody had advised me to forgive. And I just thought, how on earth can I forgive this dreadful deed? And I did research and I prepared a speech just in case. So I went to the prison and we went through all the proceedings, and they said to me, did I have anything to say? So I said, yes. And I didn't think I would forgive, but I pulled out my speech and I started reading it, and I thought, this is a bit much. He had a grade 6 education. English was not his first language, and I'd written it in quite a high style. And I thought, well, he's not understanding this. I don't think I understand it. And so I just looked at him and I just said, look, I'm taking the responsibility from my higher self and I'm handing it over to your higher self. And I forgive you and I take back my freedom. And it was the most amazing thing, because as I said those words, I was free. I was literally free. I didn't expect it. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I just broke that bond that was tying me to him and to that memory, the negative bond. Now, obviously, that memory is still there. I still talk about it, but it broke the triggers. It broke all the negative associations, and it literally set me free. I didn't walk out of that prison. I flew out of that prison.
That's incredible. That's firstly, the universe, like, you know, there's a plan and they know what they're doing. And, you know, for you to be there at the time that you were there, that was just amazing. And what a great opportunity for you to heal.
Definitely. It was that. And I suppose that was the defining moment.
Yeah. I guess when you look at, like, it must have taken so much courage for you to stand there and look at him and even just say a word, let alone say, I'm taking back my freedom.
Yeah, it was strange, because looking back now, I don't recall being brave. I don't recall being afraid. I don't recall my emotions, other than it was just such a weird experience, because I had to walk through the prison. Today they've got a separate room outside the prison to hold these hearings. But in those days, being the first one, I had to go into the prison. I had to walk through all the prisoners. It was quite a weird, uneasy experience. But I don't recall being afraid or brave. I just, just did it. So
Wow.
people call me brave, but I don't know if I was brave. It's just something I had to do.
Amazing.
And the authorities told me that they would let me know in 7 days if he got parole or not. And I just said, no, I don't need to know. I don't want to know, because I had broken that bond between us.
I loved listening to this, because people think, I don't want to forgive them because they don't deserve forgiveness, but forgiveness is not for them. Forgiveness is for you. And
absolutely.
And you walking away and saying, I don't care. He can stay in jail for the rest of his life, or he can get out tomorrow. Doesn't matter. I'm putting this behind me. The forgiveness has happened, and I don't forgive his actions and the behavior and whatever, but I also don't want to hold this anymore. So goodbye.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever really been able to put into words that feeling at that moment. It was so beautiful. It was just so freeing.
Yeah. Did you feel guided? Like, obviously, I can sense that you're quite a spiritual person. And did you feel like you were just being kind of, guided to through the process?
Dushenka, I don't know what I was feeling. I don't know if I was guided. I just know that, the universe had spoken that I had to be there. And it just happened. It just was the right thing to do. So maybe some higher spirit was guiding me. I don't know. I never really felt that.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. And so what's life been like? I guess we've talked about many different moments, but what's life been like since?
Well, at that time, 14 years after, I was living abroad. I was doing really well. I was traveling the world. I became quite an adventurous world traveler. So I was living the high life then. I was working and I was just in a very happy place for quite a long time until I turned 64. And then the country where I was, which was Oman in the Middle East, they didn't want to renew my visa because of my age. And so I had to come home. And so I came home and I was in business coaching, leadership and management training. And I just thought, age 64, do I want to start again in the corporate world? So I decided to become a life coach and do what I'm doing now in terms of healing and helping people with their trauma. And so I set up my business when I was 64. So it hasn't been easy. A lot of people don't want to follow a non-qualified therapist. So it hasn't been an easy journey for me. So I just do what I can.
Wow. But turning that, the pain, into a purpose, that's pretty amazing. You seem to have a never give up attitude.
I'm resilient and I crawl back from every disadvantage. So yes, there's no point in giving up. You've got to keep going. You've got to keep finding new avenues, new approaches. And so I'm creative, so I keep coming up with new concepts. And basically, I was helping people on their healing journey. And then I thought, this is nonsense. Why do I have to heal people? We need to stop it happening in the first place. And so I've got a program now called Brave, which is teaching mostly the youth to stop bullying and to have respect and to just treat people properly, to help stop it happening, to create better positive habits so that people can not be violent and horrible.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. And yeah, I think that educating the young people from at the beginning is better than, dealing with the fallout.
Absolutely. And it's so important when you look at it from a neuro perspective. You've got priorities in the country. The country says we've got to stop this. So the priority is set there. The awareness is there. People, the 16 days of activism and various other, what I did as an activist, the lobbying and the marching and the publicity, that is there, the awareness. But is it reaching the right people? It seems to be reaching women, but not the perpetrators, which are the men, mostly men. There are also women perpetrators. So we need to still work on getting the message to the right people. And then we need to create the right habits to get people to start behaving in the correct way. And then have the systems in place that is going to make sure that that happens. So there's still a lot of work that has to be done.
Yeah, but it sounds like, it's a wonderful start, but it also sounds like it's a huge, huge task.
It is. It's ginormous, and we need more people to get involved. I think a lot of people say, 16 days again. Oh, not again. A lot of people get quite wary of all this marching and what have you, and it's not reaching the right people. So we've got to go back to the drawing board and say, how do we reach the men? How do we reach the potential perpetrators?
So how can people get involved in the activism side of things?
Well, I don't do that much activism anymore, but I suggest people that they talk, that they speak about it. If I talk about my Brave concept, if we can just teach people those values of knowing your boundaries, sharing your boundaries, talking about boundaries, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. And then the R is having respect for other people's boundaries. The A is always asking for permission before you do anything to anybody. V is have a voice, speak up, speak out, let people know what's going on and the impact it's having on you and the community, and then empower people and treat people with equality. And if we can teach those values to everybody, then we can definitely make a difference. We can start seeing changes. So people have got to get out there and have that voice. The most important thing is to speak up, speak out. And it's not necessarily sharing your stories. It's about having a voice, lobbying, voting where you need to vote, and joining community groups that are doing something to help.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And so you've just given us really, really good advice on what people can do. But what would you say to someone who has maybe, been raped and, listening to this? What advice would you give them?
Talk to somebody, find that healing modality that works for you, write it down, and know that you're not alone. There are people out there who can help, and know that your journey is unique. It's not going to be the same as anybody else's journey. Some people are going to get better in a year. Some people are going to take 20 years. Forgiveness doesn't come easy. The first thing is you're a victim. And when you're a victim, you're dealing with all those emotions. You can't forgive when you're a victim. And you then need to build that resilience, learn how to re-look at the situation. What have I learned from that situation? How can I grow and develop from that experience? And then you grow and you become a survivor, and then you develop your grit. You go forward with passion and perseverance. You develop your grit, and only then do you become a thriver. And it's only at that point can you ever consider forgiving. You can't consider forgiving while you are still at the painful side of the journey, because you're dealing with the pain. And so forgiveness is just out of the question. But do consider forgiveness. I suggest that people start practicing forgiveness every day. So you forgive little things that don't seem important. So you forgive yourself for burning the toast. You forgive yourself for forgetting to phone your friend on her birthday. And those little things of forgiving yourself, they don't seem like, oh, why should I forgive myself for that? But what you're doing is you're developing that forgiveness muscle, and it's making you become stronger and stronger. And then you do the same with others. So every day, 3 things that you can forgive other people for. You forgive the dog for eating your slipper. Forgive your friend for forgetting to phone you on your birthday. Forgive the husband who forgot to bring the milk home from work. And so it's building that muscle so that forgiveness becomes easier, it becomes part of your life. And everybody keeps a gratitude journal. I think it's important that we use gratitude every day. Add to your gratitude journal with a forgiveness journal. And those things just make you a better person.
Yeah, I love the forgiving 3 things. I think that's a nice, that's something you can do every day. Self-forgiveness is a huge part of the work that I do with my clients.
I think it's more important than forgiving others. You've got to forgive yourself, because you're only harming yourself if you're holding those feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also it's like with self-love. If you love yourself more, you've got more love to give to others. And actually talking to a friend last night, and he said, I need to be well because I want to spread wellness. And I thought, yeah, that's brilliant. And it's true. You've got to have anything that you want to give to someone else, you have to have it first.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Forgiveness has become such an important part of my life. I actually call myself Lois, your friend for forgiveness.
Ah, I like that. And yeah, it is such an important lesson for us to learn.
As I'll repeat what I said, And that is just know you're not alone and know that your journey is unique. Find your own route, find your own way of dealing with it. There are many, many people who can help you, and there are many different kinds of therapies that you can use.
Yeah.
And forgive and fly free.
Forgive and fly free. Yeah, I think that's amazing advice. So final question for you. If you could be remembered by one word, what would it be?
Bold.
Bold. Yeah. I normally ask my guests why, but I feel like we've just discussed all the reasons why you will be remembered by being bold.
But also, I became a bit of an adventurous traveler. People were always quite amazed because I became a bit of a solo traveler to countries where women don't usually go. So I was going to countries like Iran and Pakistan and Lebanon and Haiti and places that people don't normally go to, often war-torn countries and countries where women are maybe second-class citizens. And so, yes, quite bold to do that kind of travel, especially solo.
Would you have called yourself bold prior to the attack?
Maybe because I took risks in my career. I did think I tend to do things without really planning and analyzing in too much detail. I go with my gut. And so I made some choices that led me in different directions during my life. So some of them were bold choices, yes. So I think it was probably in my personality all along.
Nice. Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your story. And, I hope that anyone listening to this can find some grains of hope if they've been through a similar situation. And I think you've given some really amazing practical and real advice and tips on not just for people who may have been attacked, but I think just for life in general. I think your brave concept is something that you can apply to absolutely all aspects of life. So I'm really grateful for you sharing your story, and honored that you have.
Thank you, Dushenka. I just think it's so important that people just know they're not alone and you can overcome any adversity or challenge with the right attitude.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lois. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for listening. I hope today's conversation inspires and empowers you to know that no matter your current situation, your life can change too. All it takes is a moment. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share it with a friend. If you would like to share your own moment, see the link in the show notes. Until next time, be present in each moment, because you never know when your moment will arrive, or when you have the gift of being a moment for someone else. Take care.